Good evening, everybody, and welcome to the October General Meeting of the Roswell Historical Society. I'm the Society's Archivist Elaine DeNiro. October is Archives Month. No better time to showcase some of the amazing material that is housed in our archives. So welcome to this presentation entitled A King Family Tale, Only This and Nothing More. Okay, it's not changing. Hold on. The RHS Archives houses the King Baker Simpson family papers. They were donated to the archives by Sarah Winner. It is a massive collection of photographs, documents, textiles, artifacts, and rare books. In processing the collection, many questions arose about certain material and what was the association with this family. Luckily, Catherine Simpson, great-granddaughter of Barrington King, spent a lifetime sorting through her family papers and making notes. These notes are invaluable to the processing of this collection. This silhouette of Honorable Ralph King was in a file folder that Catherine named Ralph King, not to be confused with Ralph Brown King. The folder's contents were intriguing and led me to try to piece together the story behind this seemingly random but rare and valuable items. Two questions came to me. Why were these very rare and special objects left at Barrington Hall and not with the direct descendants of Ralph King? Second, how was this family connected to other equally prominent families from this period? And so this very, very poignant story begins. First of all, who is Ralph King? Ralph is the fifth son of Roswell King and Catherine Barrington King. He was born in Darien, Georgia in 1801. His older brother Barrington established the town of Roswell with their father Ralph King in the late 1830s. Although Ralph is named in the incorporation of the Roswell Manufacturing Company, he does not live in Roswell. In 1822, Ralph marries Isabel Margaret Gibbs from New York City in St. Augustine's, Florida. As seen here and throughout this tale are pages from the Bible of Ralph King that document important facts about the family. Ralph is a cotton broker in Savannah. Mention of him and variations on his partnerships are listed in newspapers at this time on the coast. Soon after their marriage, Ralph and Isabel start a family. From 1824 to 1839, the couple have 6 children. Isabella Catherine is born in 1824. George Gibbs is born in Savannah in 1829. Roswell McNeil is born in 1832. Isabella Sophia is born in 1835. And then we have twins that are born in 1839, Georgia Eliza and Florida Baird. Unfortunately, tragedy strikes, and 3 of their daughters die. Isabella Catherine in 1826 at the age of 2 in Macon. Isabella Sophia, who was born and named that because her older sister had died, dies at 2 years of age in Savannah in 1837. Georgia Eliza is the older twin daughter, and she dies in the city of Savannah in 1840. In 1840, Ralph moves with his wife and remaining 3 children, George, Roswell, in Florida, known as Ida, to New Orleans. He is a prominent cotton broker. As early as 1842, there is mentions of his business dealings in the New Orleans local paper. Tragically, once again, the family mourns the death of their son, Roswell McNeil, in New Orleans at the age of 15 in 1847. In New Orleans, Ralph was appointed to a committee to make arrangements for the meeting of a convention in New Orleans on the 22nd day of February in 1848 for the purpose to elevate General Zachary Taylor to the presidency. The Whig convention took place in Philadelphia in June of 1848. Millard Fillmore was his vice president, nominated as his running mate. The Whig ticket won the presidential election in 1848, with Taylor taking office in March 1849. Seen as a reward for helping and endorsing Taylor's election in July of 1848, Zachary Taylor appoints Ralph King as U.S. Consul to Bremen, Germany. A consul in foreign service is a public officer who is commissioned to reside in a foreign country for the purpose of fostering the commercial affairs of its citizens in that foreign country. They are referred to as honorable. This leads us to another intriguing document in the collection, the official certificate of the appointment as consul. Notice the signature on the document is not Zachary Taylor. Why isn't it? Well, because Zachary Taylor died 5 days after attending a 4th of July celebration of a stomach affliction in 1850, and Millard Fillmore, his vice president, became president. The certificate is signed the 13th of August, 1850, and there's this beautiful embossed seal. So let's stop a moment to explore the King Poe connection. We know that Ralph traveled to Macon with his family in 1826, for his first child died there. By this time, Macon area is a major producer of cotton, and remember, Ralph is a cotton broker. Prominent citizens are known to the King family. One very important prominent citizen of Macon is Washington Poe, a lawyer and one-time mayor of the city. His photograph was found in the King collection among an album with other close relatives. Washington Poe is the cousin of Edgar Allan Poe. Washington is Edgar's father, David Poe Jr.'s first cousin. According to a letter published in the book With Kindly Voices, a 19th Century Georgia Family by Virginia King Nurenstein, Washington received a letter from Edgar in 1840 telling him of his financial and publishing problems. So, is there a family connection between the Poes and the King family? Oh yes, there is. Washington Poe is married to Selina Norman, who is the sister of Mary Norman Prince. Mary is married to Oliver Hillhouse Prince, and Mary is the mother of Elizabeth Frances, known as Fanny Prince, who is married to James Roswell King. So Washington and Selina Poe are the aunt and uncle of Fanny and James Roswell King. In 1845, Edgar Allan Poe publishes his famous poem, The Raven, in a New York Evening Mail newspaper. Here it says, "This poem will stick to the memory of everyone who reads it." The Raven. It is an immediate success both nationally and internationally, and is published in book form, The Raven and Other Poems, in the same year. Children begin to follow Poe through the streets, cawing and flapping their arms, and then quickly running away when the author would turn around and exclaim, "Nevermore!" The Raven is a tale of grief and loss. The distraught protagonist is visited by a talking bird while mourning the death of his love, Lenore. And here are the first two stanzas. "Once upon a midnight dreary, while I pondered, weak and weary, over many a quaint and curious volume of forgotten lore, while I nodded nearly nappy, suddenly there came a tapping, as if someone gently rapping at my chamber door. 'Tis some visitor," I muttered, "tapping at my chamber door. Only this and nothing more." Ah, distinctly I remember it was bleak December, and each separate dying ember wrought its ghost upon the floor. Eagerly I wished the morrow, vainly I had sought to borrow from my book surcease of sorrow, sorrow for the lost Lenore, for the rare and radiant maiden whose angels named Lenore, nameless here forevermore. During this time, George Gibbs King, son of Ralph King, is a teenager. He's an amiable in disposition and kind-hearted. George is a gifted poet. Before his family leaves for Bremen, they come to Roswell to visit their King relatives. This brings us to the next amazing item in the archives. In the collection of Ralph King family folder is this leather-bound notebook that belongs to George. It is filled with his handwritten poems that are noted with the date and the location, telling when and where they were written. One poem stands out. It is a poem that is written in the style of Poe. The Raven, it is a narrative written as George looks down at the mill in Roswell. You can imagine him sitting here at the top, across the street from Barrington Hall, looking down at the mill that is engraved here and writing this poem. Lines written at the Roswell factory, June 12th, 1849, after the style of Poe's Raven. Once upon a midday hazy, while I yawned weak and lazy, lolling on a curious country manufactured chair, while I graphed at sundry flies that were buzzing round my eyes, crawling o'er with no surprise, hands and face and mouth and ear, lo, a humming and a rattling, as though the elements were battling. 'Tis some thundering storm arising, with my glance the heavens comprising. As I viewed the scud fast flying, this the rattling, only this and nothing more. Yet I thought it rather curious, though the sound grew fast and furious, that no raindrop fell to earth, gladdening flowers into birth. When again I heard a roar that sounded as it did before, waking echoes in my brain, stinging all my nerves in pain, stiffening every single hair as though some ghost just from the beer had filled me with this quaking fear. Yet once more, but a little lower, I heard this strange, unnatural, harsh and guttural roar. Only this and nothing more. What is that disturbs me so? The cause of all this noise, I'll know. 'Tis surely strange, this curious humming, this constant drumming, with rage my bosom smarting, my eyes in anger darting. I sought the object of my wrath, and chairs and books bestrewed my path, when suddenly I heard a bell, and in a moment all sounds of hell were raveled by one deafening yell. What is this roar? Someone said, the factory's starting. Only this and nothing more. It's dated 1849, and just 1 month later, the family leaves for Bremen, Germany. And it's also, just a side note, 4 months before the death of Edgar Allan Poe. On July 1849, Ralph and his family leave New York on a steamer bound for Bremen, Germany. Sadly, once again, 4 years later, death visits the family. George Gibbs, our poet, dies in Bremen and is buried there in a lonely grave. This is an obituary that's found in a New Orleans newspaper. Died at Bremen on the 1st of March last, George Gibbs King, age 24, eldest son of Ralph King, U.S. Consul at Bremen and formerly a resident of this city. The deceased was a young man of much promise, of very engaging manners, amiable in disposition, a kind-hearted and agreeable companion, and a steadfast friend. While just entering upon the business of life with every prospect of a bright and successful career, he has been cut down in the flower of youth by the inexorable hand of death. The second bereavement of a similar nature sustained by his estimable parents within a few short years. They have the sympathies of all whom they have known in this last and bitter trial. A friend who held the deceased in high esteem and would not forget this lonely grave in a foreign land offers to his memory this a light tribute of regard. Ralph and his wife, Isabella, returned to United States and live in Brooklyn. Ralph is listed at times as a merchant and a broker. In 1857, Isabella Marguerite King dies, the wife of Ralph King, and is buried in Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn. And here's a photo of her grave. In 1859, Ralph marries Mildred H. Bronow in Washington, D.C. Unbelievably, the couple has a son whom they name Ralph, and the baby passes away 4 days after his birth. So Ralph has one remaining child, Florida Ida Baird King. In December of 1860, Ida marries William McNeill Whistler. He's a surgeon. They live in Richmond, Virginia. In a family letter, we learn that Ida Whistler visited her relatives in Roswell in June of 1862. Now for the Whistler connection. William is the brother of the artist James Abbott McNeill Whistler, known for the famous painting of their mother, Whistler's mother. According to a family account on Ancestry, Ralph King was a fine art enthusiast. He managed the financial affairs of Whistler's mother and actually met Whistler in England during a tour abroad. There is also the fact, if you remember, one of Ralph's children, middle name was McNeill, Roswell McNeill, the same as the middle names of the Whistlers. But I haven't figured out this connection yet. But once again, tragedy strikes. Florida Ida Whistler dies childless of consumption in 1863, 3 years after her marriage. William had joined the Orr's Rifles as a medical army officer during the Civil War. Here we see an obituary, died in Roswell, Virginia, Sunday, 29th March, 1863. My much loved daughter, Florida Baird Whistler, age 23 years, 7 months, and 27 days. And then you see at the bottom, it says that she died of consumption. She was the wife of Dr. William McNeill Whistler, CSA, and a daughter of Ralph King in the city. The Lord gave, and the Lord hath taken away. Blessed be the name of the Lord. After the Civil War, actually, Whistler will move to London. He will remarry and raise a family. She is buried in Greenwood Cemetery in Brooklyn, New York, and she is the last of Ralph King's children. Ralph passed away in October of 1878 at the home of his sister-in-law in Georgetown. You see again, died in Georgetown on Friday, October 11th, 1878, Ralph King, the beloved husband of M.M. King, in the 78th year of his age. He giveth his beloved rest. And it said that he did die at the residence of his sister-in-law, Mrs. Fanny Bronow. She lived in Georgetown, and his remains will be taken to New York for interment. He is buried in Greenwood Cemetery near his first wife, Isabella, and his daughter, Florida Ida Baird Whistler, and will be joined by his second wife, Mildred, after her death in 1902. So alas, now we know the connection with the Poe and the Whistler families and why these special family documents, records, and poem book may reside in his brother Barrington's family collection. For Ralph King had no descendants to cherish them. I could end this presentation with the words, nevermore, but of course, that would be tacky.